What's up YouTube, Roblox Prodigy here, bringing you a follow-up video to my infinite tier list. I'm gonna be ranking the best story mode units for you. So let's get started. And just like the last video, I'm just gonna say that this is my opinion, but in general this is pretty much accurate and up to date. I've done all the story mode missions myself, and I own most of the best units in the game anyways. So let's get started. So we're going to start off with F tier units. These are pretty much the same as the infinite modes. They're all just average units. I'm sure some of them can be placed higher, some of them have bleed, some of them are cheap to put down, but in general there are much better units out there that you can be putting down. And moving on to the E tier list, this is also kind of unchanged. You can see that we have a few units here that are 3 costs. For example, this one, she's probably the best 3 cost unit in the game. She's great for defending early waves, but only for the earlier story mode missions, not for the later ones, like the new ones, the Mob Psycho map or the Fairy Tale map. In D tier, it's kind of the same as with the infinite mode tier list. Most of these units are just okay. They do okay damage. I think I've moved up some of the air units from this tier, for example King and Genos, just because the air units in story mode aren't that powerful, and there's only 3 per wave from like wave 9 plus, so you don't really need a really strong air unit. C list is going to be roughly the same as well for that reason. So moving on to B tier, you can see that I've moved down all of the top tier infinite mode units, which are just completely like unusable in story mode just because they're so expensive, or for Gogeta you need Goku and Vegeta, which just makes him kind of useless. Mihawk is also way too expensive. Gon is like 40k, which is just outrageous. The rest of these units are kind of unchanged. They're just a little bit expensive, or there's just better units in them. So Obito, Akaza, their range is just not high enough, and they're just a little bit too expensive for what they do. Moving to A tier, the biggest change is that Natsu got nerfed so that his starting cost is 1000. So you can't put him down from wave 1. Otherwise this guy would literally be up here, but because of that he's down here, and his later upgrades are also just crazy expensive, so that's why he's only going to be stuck in A tier. I moved up Sogeking or Masked Captain to A tier because he's just probably the next best air unit to defend with, other than Golden Frieza or potentially Nagato now that he can attack airs. But yeah, this guy is great for story mode. I've used him even in the Black Clover map to defend the air units, and he's just all around good. Jotaro's here. He just doesn't do that much damage, but his time stop can still be kind of useful. Megumin's in A tier, although she could potentially be in B tier just because she's just a spammable like 6k damage. Just kind of like light Yagami but cheaper, and you can spam her. Broly's also going to be in A tier just because the air unit's a bit weaker, and he does a huge range AoE, full AoE damage. Luffy's going to be here. His range is high, his starting cost is high as well, but he makes up for it with his range and relatively cheap costs. Blackbeard is also a decent unit. His cost is okay, he's like 7k-ish, but his range is not too high. He's just a good unit overall. He's in A tier. Gojo, again, I still think Jotaro might be better just because he's cheaper, and Gojo is okay. He does decent damage, but he does cost 7k to put down. I'm going to move on to S tier. Here you can see Sanemi and Fujitora moving up from compared to the infinite tier modes. They have great damage and great range, and they're decently cheap. Not too cheap, but decently cheap. Nagato and Whitebeard are here, although Whitebeard could potentially be lower just because he costs 10k overall to put down. Nagato I think is better than Whitebeard anyways, and is slightly cheaper, so Nagato is definitely better. But he is still also quite expensive by himself. Dio is here because he does good damage, bleed, and he's cheap and has the time stop as well. So I think he is the best time stop unit for story mode. Moving on, we have Nezuko, Maka and Toga. Maka is great for defending early waves, which is why she's moved up to S tier. Nezuko is also just Nezuko, so she's great. And her range makes her insane for all of the maps in story mode, just because the map's smaller compared to like in infinite modes. So she pretty much reaches the full map in a lot of maps. Rengoku's moved up and Ace has moved up. Rengoku obviously is crazy single target damage. You can just melt the boss at the end. But other than that, his SPA is too high and he's also relatively expensive. Ace is here just because, for example, if you're doing Trial 3, this guy is pretty much necessary. But other than that, he does good damage, does a burn, which is like 5 times his starting damage. And he's good for defending early waves whilst you farm up with Bulma. So we're going to move on to the last tier, and as you can see I've wrote down cheap and strong. So to be in the best tier you need to be both extremely cheap but extremely powerful, and that's what all of these units do. So in the beginning slot we have Bulma, although I think she could probably be a bit lower in this tier. Same with Erwin. They just make every unit better. It means that you can put down more units, and if you can get 4 or 5 max Bulmas defending with like a 1 unit, you can max out all of the units. You can put down basically all of your units before the last wave. So she's very necessary for the newer maps, so the Black Clover map and the new Mob Psycho map. At the top of S plus tier, I think Minato is the best unit. He's only costs like 4k, but he does 1.7k damage with 3 SPA and 50 range almost. So this guy is literally like the one unit you need to clear any story mode. And if you have 8 of him down, like you don't even need Rengoku. Literally is just worthless compared to this. You have 8 of these down, he just melts the boss. So the best air unit for story mode is going to be Golden Frieza, 6-star Frieza. He is just extremely cheap. He's just a cheap version of Gogeta. He's slightly worse, slightly less range, but he's just like a third of the cost, and you don't need this crappy Goku and this crappy Vegeta. Like you just put him down and he can defend all of the air units whilst dealing damage to ground units as well. Next in S plus is Kaido. Kaido, I'm sure some of the leaderboard guys have talked about him a bit as a story mode unit, but he's very cheap and he defends both ground and air now after the update. So I'm sure he's a great story mode unit. Not so much in infinite mode just because his damage isn't high enough, but in story mode you can put a bunch of these down for quite low cost and he's good for defending. So to top off S plus tier we have Sasuke 5-star. So Sasuke 5-star was the original like best story mode unit before Minato came. Obviously Minato does like 3 times his damage, which is why Sasuke is probably at the bottom of S plus tier. But Sasuke can easily help you clear the maps, and if you put 8 of him down, he's okay with Erwin buff. He's okay to kill the bosses as well. His special ability also allows him to kill the air units, and since the air units are quite weak, it does a good job of doing it. So you don't even need to run an air unit if you have Sasuke for certain maps. But obviously I think with Minato out and Golden Frieza, these two are just better than Sasuke, which is why he's at the bottom of this list. But yeah, that's it guys. Remember to comment down what you think, if you think any units should be moved up. I haven't really done too much with the F tier, so I'm sure you guys can let me know. But if you have certain units that you have in your inventory that you are currently using and you want me to rate them for you, comment down below as well. Remember to like and subscribe, and thanks for watching.